us friends from OPPD who will be talking to us about the Pathways to Decarbonization. I have watched all of the workshops that they have done for the public. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you so much. It's a very in-depth topic. So today they get a little over an hour to kind of give us an overview. I'm sure they will give us the resources to go look more in depth at the other things they have done. The presentations have been recorded previously. So yeah, without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Ryan and Colton from OPPD.
Thanks, Michelle. Hey, you covered a couple of things I was going to mention in the kickoff, so thank you. I was going to mention that if you haven't had a chance to watch our workshops, they are on oppdcommunityconnect.com. So there were 4 previous workshops, each 2 hours. So we're trying to condense that information into a presentation for you today. And thanks for giving us the opportunity as well to present to you. So it's always exciting and we appreciate your engagement. And so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ryan Stigge. I'm the program manager for our decarbonization initiative. I actually took this over after Jeremy moved into a new role. So exciting there for me. Before that, I was part of our decarbonization initiative. I was on our technology exploration team as part of the energy portfolio project. So I spent 7 years before that working in our energy production group at the North Omaha station. And also with me today is Colton Kennedy. He is leading our energy portfolio project, and he's also the manager of corporate planning. And so I guess, you mentioned the other workshops, and Michelle, you said you attended them. I'm just curious how many others from our audience today have had a chance to kind of see those or catch some of them or all of them or none. I see.
This is John Chrysler. I attended 3 live and 1 later.
Good, thank you. I think I saw a couple no's and yeses in there. So thanks to everyone that did, and hopefully we can catch you up today. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask as we go along. So with that, I'll turn it over to Colton to bring up our presentation and get us moving.
Thanks, Ryan. Did you want me to pull it up or did you have it up?
I can pull it up if you want.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. I'm working off of one screen today. So while Ryan's doing that, thank you for those who have been able to attend those workshops. We're going to go through a pretty quick presentation today. I mean, quick is taking 8 hours and turning it down to 30 or 45 minutes, and making sure that we have time for conversation afterwards, kind of on the topics that you would like. But as Ryan had said, my name is Colton Kennedy. I manage corporate planning at OPPD. That includes our long-term load forecasting and our generation planning, like what we're doing and like what decarbonization is. It also includes sort of our nearer term fuel and power forecasting for the organization. So Ryan will talk about it more, but the decarbonization effort is actually made up of, it's a strategic initiative, and it's made up of separate individual projects. The project that I'm focused on and I'm leading with a large team at OPPD is called the Energy Portfolio Project. And so the energy portfolio is really all of our set of resources that serve customers' electric demand. But the study that we have, the Energy Portfolio Project, will study actionable pathways to eliminate or significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions from OPPD's energy portfolio while balancing impacts on reliability, resiliency, and affordability. The energy portfolio is the most significant contribution that OPPD has, and it is sort of, the foundational infrastructure to enable broader decarbonization across the economy. We're going to talk about that today. So the objectives today is really, I know that there's some people who have seen the overall presentations. I'll provide a recap, but I'll make sure that we leave time for open discussion at the end. Provide an overview, talk about the public engagement that we have and that we're planning. I'll kind of do a quick dive into each of the 4 workshops, and then we'll have that open discussion. And
yes,
Ryan, I'll turn it over to you to talk about maybe the other projects before we focus more specifically.
Yeah, so today is really focused on the energy portfolio, but the Pathways to Decarbonization initiative is actually 4 projects. So there's our energy portfolio project, which is the big one that everyone thinks about, right? That's our generating assets. And then we have an internal operations project, and that project team is really tasked with developing that inventory of carbon emissions across OPPD. So that's, not only our generating assets, but our internal operations, such as vehicle fleets and buildings, and looking at ways we can decarbonize those non-generating assets. Then we have our customer project, which is really looking at different products and programs that we can offer to help our customers decarbonize and reduce their own carbon footprint. And we have a community project, which is really our opportunity to kind of be that community partner and leader in reducing carbon emissions throughout the communities. So looking at different ways we can advocate for and partner with our communities to reach their own decarbonization goals. And I will send it back to you, Colton.
Thanks. So today, again, we're going over 4 of the workshops. There's actually 6 planned workshops that OPPD is having with the public around different phases of the project. Today, we'll talk about kind of the overall project and kind of what we shared with the overall project plan. Not a lot of time, because actually we'll be able to share and talk about some of the results at this point. For our multi-sector modeling, which is really how we're evaluating the opportunities and impacts of decarbonization across the economy, knowing that the question is more around energy than it is just electricity, and that shifting energy demand has a significant impact on the electric utility. The next workshop that we'll be doing a brief overview of is around key assumptions and scenarios. And so this is really around what types of technologies are we considering? What are we considering for new technologies and emerging technologies? What types of options are we considering around our existing assets to be able to make them lower carbon intensity or remove them? In that, we'll also be talking about kind of the pace of decarbonization and sort of what goes into the modeling as far as the cost reductions in technology, but the overall targets and pace that we're trying to achieve. The 4th workshop was around our modeling approach, and so this is really where we integrate the economic modeling, the reliability modeling, and the to be able to solve the sort of the techno-economic challenge of minimizing emissions or reaching net zero emissions while minimizing costs. And so we'll talk about the framework and the tools that we're using to achieve that. There's 2 more workshops that will happen later in the fall as we get to a point where we have results. We'll be sharing the initial results of our modeling in our energy portfolio, and then the final results. Certainly, when we're looking at our energy portfolio, that's a very, very significant impact to OPPD, but also, whatever that portfolio looks like has a significant impact on the region at large, jobs and facilities as well. So we'll be talking about kind of what the different potential pathways look like and getting feedback in that initial results and final results workshops. The interim modeling update, you'll see there on 8.4 is actually our next engagement with the public, and that was added at request of stakeholders just to kind of see how we're going along in the process. And so if you'd like to join us, that would be the next opportunity. Ryan, maybe we can kind of keep moving here. I'll talk through the workshop number 1, which is the initiative overview. And I guess if anyone has any questions around kind of the overall project or what I presented, please interrupt and ask those questions. So you'll see that the letterhead's changed here. E3 is a company that a consulting firm that we've hired and is working with OPPD on this analysis. They're a company that has a significant experience specifically in modeling decarbonization and sort of the techno-economic analysis and optimization that goes behind that. And so they've worked in a number of jurisdictions, primarily on the coast and in California, around these decarbonization plans and around resource adequacy modeling. The phases of the project that we have with them and they're doing with this study include that multi-sector modeling, which I think will be pretty interesting to this group, and I'll share that. We're doing a detailed reliability and resiliency analysis. So this is making sure that it's always been a focus of the utility to ensure that we have a high level of reliability and we have a resilient system. It's a critical service, and so it needs to be operational, no matter what the climate conditions. I think in this reliability and resiliency analysis, as we look through the goal of decarbonization, we see the types of resources that we're depending on changing, and so that brings in significant new factors. And we also, those resources are much more climate dependent, and so we'll need to make sure that we have the right mix of resources and the right location of those resources, but the right integration of resources to be able to solve that challenge. We have portfolio optimization, which is minimizing cost, again subject to the constraints, a risk analysis to make sure that ultimately the types of financial risks that we're exposed to are manageable for the district and for ratepayers, and ultimately we'll be developing a final report to share, and that'll set the pathways for potential action. Okay, so that was kind of workshop number 1. We were laying out the overall work, and there's quite a bit more content there, but since we've already had workshops 2, 3, and 4, I figure better spend that time actually going through the content that we've done. So workshop number 2 was around multi-sector modeling. And next slide, Ryan. And so, really the challenge that we're looking at and we're facing is not just an electricity challenge. It's a global challenge, and it has to do with GHG emissions, which aren't just electricity, but are a lot are driven by materials and energy consumption broadly. And so where we wanted to start the analysis is really starting and looking at the opportunity for our region or for OPPD service territory to achieve decarbonization. What would need to happen? And so, individuals use electricity in a variety of forms, or use energy in a variety of forms. Some of the largest energy uses are heating, ventilation, air conditioning, transportation, water heating, domestic uses. And so, things like transportation, or HVAC, with natural gas today, or other forms of energy consumption that our customers are using that have environmental emissions. And so what's the opportunity really to be able to facilitate this broader reduction? And that there is quite a bit of opportunity through electrification of those different sectors or those different end uses. But ultimately, the electricity grid behind behind the scenes will need to be able to be providing clean, reliable electricity or energy for those end uses. And so as we look at electrifying, that also means a lot of load growth for the electric utility. It means a lot of new challenges in managing it, and actually more important than ever to have a reliable and resilient grid. As things like transportation and basic heating of homes, now are more reliant on electricity. So, next slide, Ryan. Where we started with this analysis is a broad inventory, and so we did a broad inventory of emissions across different sectors in the OPPD service territory. The large majority, or not large majority, but the majority of total emissions are through electricity generation. And you'll notice some of that's OPPD's generation, some of it's non-OPPD generation, just other generators within our region. That's followed by transportation, industrial, residential, and commercial. The sectors that you see there for those other emissions, those are counting non-electric emissions of those sectors. So, as an example, residential also consumes quite a bit of electricity, and so you could actually say that a portion of the electricity is driven by residential energy consumption, or commercial or industrial. But this is breaking it out into electric and then the remaining emissions by sector. And so OPPD's plan, our goal is to achieve net zero carbon by 2050. And so on the right, you can kind of see that straight line emissions reduction of electricity. But then you also see, all of the other emissions over time. And so even if things get more efficient and you have, you'll have a growing population, and so you see those other areas are pretty much flat. And so there's also opportunity to make emissions reductions in those other areas. Looks like we have a question: what program do we use to create our GHG inventory? So we're actually using the carbon accounting protocol. Ryan, correct me, or Jeremy, correct me, but I think it's the carbon accounting protocol for our own emissions, and then we're taking EIA data around end-use energy consumption, and we're using the sort of average emissions, of those fuel types within the region. So the EIA has great data on how much fuel is consumed, within a region, and so we're looking at it kind of at the overall, fuel input level to be able to create an estimate of what the output emissions are for the non-electric sector. Okay, next slide. And so, we're looking at, there's a variety of ways that we can achieve decarbonization across the community. One scenario that we looked at, we called it the balance scenario. It's a scenario that uses the most economically efficient way to reduce emissions in those other areas. And so you see that there's significant reduction. A lot of that's being achieved through vehicle electrification of light-duty vehicles, moderate electrification of medium and heavy-duty vehicles, a significant increase or replacement of the natural gas heating infrastructure with electric heat pumps. And lastly, there are emissions that are left that are very, very difficult to actually decarbonize. I'll give an example is like aviation. aviation is something that requires, fuel to be very energy dense. And so it's very hard to put a bunch of batteries on a plane. It wouldn't be very efficient. So, it gets to be very costly there. Or there's certain high temperature industrial applications or feedstocks for different industrial processes that can be difficult to decarbonize. And so there's a little bit of a remaining sector here with the rest of the economy. And the analysis, at this point, we're thinking that there will be some sort of carbon capture mechanism or offset program of some sort to be able to offset those really, really hard to decarbonize areas of the economy. But in all cases, the blue, which is the electricity demand, would be net zero in 2050. Okay. And so, I said we evaluated a number of cases. The balanced case was one. Here there's one, the reference case, which would be no other decarbonization outside of the electric utility. There's one for moderate decarbonization where, OPPD is still decarbonizing, but there really isn't a push. There's a slight push from other sectors, but not a significant push from other sectors. And then we have 3 net zero across the entire economy scenarios. We call it high fuels, balanced, and high electrification. So there's a range of different ways that you can get there. One might be more dependent on things like hydrogen or biofuels. Another might be higher dependence on really electricity. There's the balance is sometimes it's better to use low carbon fuels, and sometimes it's better to use electricity. The balance is sort of the most economic of those options. So you look on the left and you see sort of the declining emissions over time of our service territory. On the right, you see each of those scenarios have an impact on OPPD's annual electric energy, right, or electric load that we need to serve customers. And there's the reference scenario is if the other areas didn't decarbonize, and that balanced scenario is probably a good estimate of where, if we're going to achieve decarbonization as a community, of what electric loads might look like as some of those other end-use energies uses get shifted towards the electric sector. So it would cause significant load growth. And so I guess we did this analysis really. You're fine, Ryan.
Sorry, Jeremy, or sorry, Colton. I inadvertent click there.
No, we can move forward to the next one.
Okay.
So, the whole point of doing this analysis is to understand what's the electric utility of the future that we need to plan for. We're not just planning for in isolation, but we're trying to be proactive and plan for what it needs to be to support this broader goal. And so what we're seeing is that the load growth actually in the future could, by 2050, our electric load could be 2.5 times higher than it is today. And I'm not getting into the detail here, but there's actually a significant impact on when we have that load throughout the year and what types of conditions that we need to plan for. Heating in the winter, there's different times that become actually much more challenging and much more critical. We know that electricity and a clean electric grid is the linchpin, so you're going to see higher levels of electrification if we're actually going to try to achieve that goal. There's these 4 pillars that help us get there, and our optimization, our pathways. Will kind of show how OPPD's energy portfolio shifts over time. But economy-wide, you have the energy efficiency and conservation. You have electrification. Things like heating to natural gas heating to heat pumps, or things like combustion engines to electric vehicles. You have our overall grid side, which is the energy portfolio, which is the little red box on the left. We need to make that electricity in a low carbon way. or zero carbon way, and then on the lower right, this low carbon fuel initiative or replacement of some applications. Okay. So that's what we had for workshop number 2, and again, there's quite a bit more detail, and we're actually putting together a report as well that will be part of our study to kind of inform how we can do this as a community and to be able to support this analysis in the future. So there'll be a report even just specifically for the multi-sector modeling that we're doing. The next workshop that we had was really around the assumptions that we have as a utility going into this. And I mentioned earlier, things like technologies and the pace of technology or options available to us, or the pace of decarbonization. Those are all assumptions that go into the modeling effort. And actually, Ryan Stigge, before he is in this role, served to lead on our energy production side and on our technology exploration side of the energy portfolio, led some of the exploration of these various options. So I'm going to turn these slides over to him for a minute.
Thanks, Colton. Yeah, so as Colton mentioned, this is one of the areas I know the most about, just because I was heavily involved in it, leading the team exploring the candidate technologies. And this team really spent the last year exploring and brainstorming, researching different candidate technologies as part of the energy portfolio project. And it was a pretty diverse team. So we had energy production presence from our system and design engineering. We had people from our alternative energy program on the team, as well as members from our environmental and regulatory affairs, financial services, and customer services teams. So we brought a pretty diverse viewpoint and really kind of approached it from there were things we knew, and there were a lot of technologies that we didn't have a lot of knowledge on. So we did a lot of research and reached out to different avenues, conferences, even working with some vendors to help us with different technologies. And through that, we identified approximately 150 different technologies that we started with to include in this study. And those technologies are at different levels of feasibility and maturity. Some are available today, some are experimental, and there's just not a lot of data on them yet. And some are at multiple, varying levels of scale as well. So some are ready for utility scale, and some are on a benchtop somewhere right now, still being researched and developed. And so, with so many technologies and ideas, there really became a need to find a way to aggregate those down and screen them, to take that large list and bring it down to something manageable and something that's really feasible to input into this modeling process. And so we worked with our vendor partner E3 to produce kind of this framework for aggregating and screening those technologies. And we took that list of about 150 potential technologies and narrowed that down to, I believe, 18 that are being utilized in the modeling process going forward. And, really, there are a lot of different technologies out there, some new, many new to OPPD at least, but also our existing generating assets were involved in those ideas as well. And this is really important to us as well as our customer owners, because we rely on those units today. We've already paid for them. They're already there and functioning. And so finding a way to incorporate those through multiple different avenues was really important to this effort. And so some of those options that our existing assets that we looked at was was one, leaving them in place, and that could mean many different things in terms of leaving them in place. It could be a different form of operation. There could be lower utilization, seasonal utilization, cycling, among other options to reduce the emissions on those existing units. Another avenue that we looked at was converting fuel sources. So you kind of see down at the bottom, we have what some of those options are. So you could be going from coal to natural gas, or even to a blend of natural gas and hydrogen, or fully to hydrogen. Natural gas units could be converted from natural gas to a biofuel, such as a biodiesel or a renewable diesel, or it could be a blend or full conversion to hydrogen. And we spent a lot of time looking at those options, as well as really putting out what the cost overlay for things like that and performance attributes would be for those types of conversions. So I mentioned different fueling options, but also there's a co-firing option. I don't think I mentioned that when I was talking about the coal to gas, but you could have as a transition state, really a co-firing option to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions on those coal units, to co-fire coal and gas, or even a seasonal coal and say coal in the winter, gas in the summer, depending on fuel availability. And so we talk a lot about conversions to these assets, as well as the new technologies. But one thing that is really good to note is, we have this other project going on that's not really part of Pathways to Decarbonization. It's separate, Power with Purpose, and that's really a near-term project that enables us to transition North Omaha units 4 and 5 to natural gas, and retire units 1, 2, and 3 at North Omaha, as well as being able to add that additional solar that's part of that project. So that plays a major part in our decarbonization, while not necessarily part of Pathways to Decarbonization. It definitely plays into it. All right, I think back to you, Colton.
And so we're looking at achieving decarbonization sort of at a range of paces. You'll kind of see here a diagram of OPPD emissions over time, with a couple of dates there, 2035 and 2050. And so as part of building a plan, we want to know what's possible. We want to know what the outcomes of different options are. And so the study is going to evaluate what it takes to get to net zero by 2035, what it takes to get to net zero by 2050 in a straight line, in an accelerated and in a moderated pace, and also a reference to be able to compare those others to, if we did nothing, what would the cost be? So, we'll be able to see the incremental cost to ratepayers for each of those different pathways, as well as maybe some of the technology opportunities or technology challenges for being able to meet certain deadlines versus others. So, we sort of a broad range here to inform where we're going with the analysis. Next slide. And so we did get stakeholder feedback, but what we want to see is sort of a range of different technologies and a range of different timelines to know, if we just looked at the technology that we have today that's available, that's mature, that's not at risk of experimental development, what would it cost and what investments would we make? And then we want to see, if we were allowed the opportunity for some of these newer emerging technologies, if they did break through, how might that change our plan? And so, all this really kind of stems around how can we go forward with a no regrets sort of technology pathway, or a pathway that works in the most futures. So you see, as far as the target, there's that reference. There's the net zero straight line, accelerated, and moderate by 2050, then net zero by 2035. We're also looking at an absolute zero by 2050. So that would mean that OPPD's energy portfolio wouldn't include any carbon emitting assets. So, you know, I guess we've used the term net quite a bit here, but you know, for a lot of our planning, we plan for very extreme peaks, or we plan for sort of like singular and short duration events that, you know, you might use a little bit of fossil type fuel, you know, in peaking assets or in today's assets. You know, you might reserve them just for, you know, emergencies, as an example. But that absolute zero scenario would, you know, force us to really invest in extremely long duration storage, or you know maybe very high levels of assets to be able to have the same level of reliability. So, you know, we're going to take a look at it and say, you know, what's possible, how much does it cost, and, you know, I think that's what you're seeing with the absolute zero scenario. We also have a near zero, which would be something less than net zero. You know, what's the incremental cost going from 80% to 90% or 90% to 95%? Our goal is still, I guess to be clear, our goal is still net zero by 2050. But, you know, those bottom two are, you know, inform us of some of the different costs of alternatives as we go through the process. Thanks, Ryan. And the last workshop that we had was on our modeling approach. And this is really kind of how we're putting this all together in a singular framework to be able to solve. You know, I said that, you know, electric demand is very, you know, we have to plan for extreme events. We have to plan for the types of events that happen this weekend, but that was all distribution level. On the generation side, on the asset side, we also have to plan for these types of extreme events, like you're seeing, you know, in the Northwest or on the West Coast, where you have very, very high temperatures and very high loads, you know, or the type of event that we had in the polar vortex, where we had extreme cold and you know, we had unseasonably high peaks in the winter months. This graphic is showing just a single year of what our electric demand looks like. And so you can see, you know, just how dynamic our system has to be. We have to be able to design our system, or the electric system, to handle, you know, all these extreme events, all the peaks, and it really has to be there, you know, in the times that we need it most. But you know, what we're trying to do with decarbonization is how can we, to the best we can, on a day-to-day basis, reduce our emissions of our portfolio. So, you know, that's the challenge: is how do we achieve, you know, the decarbonization, or how do we achieve emissions reductions, but also have the capability to, you know, to serve these extreme events. And I should say, actually, with the multi-sector modeling that we saw, you know, here you have summer peaks, right? In that multi-sector modeling, we saw once you convert transportation or heating over to electricity, you know, if it's not done right, you can see winter peaks that are actually quite a bit higher than our summer peaks today. And so that can be, you know, be challenging to plan for. Next slide, please. And so the modeling approach is really this holistic, integrated, very mathematical sort of framework to be able to solve the environmental goal, to be able to set the planning framework and the criteria that we're going to have sufficient resources or resource adequacy. We're going to have a reliable portfolio that can work and manage and meet those needs during those extreme events. And we're also going to try to minimize the cost to get there. So those are kind of the three different objectives or constraints that we have when we're trying to solve this. And this is the modeling that we're getting into this summer. You know, I think some of the challenges, just to kind of visually show, I mentioned earlier, but like the types of resources that we're going to have to depend on for our electric, for our electric supply in the future are just fundamentally different than the resources that we've depended on in the past. And that really affects how we're planning and how we're looking at how we're meeting our reliability or our resource adequacy to be able to serve customers. So, traditionally, you have resources like in the lower left graphic on this slide. They're called firm dispatchable resources. It means that they can be dispatched or they can be turned on at any point in time, and they can maintain that generation throughout time indefinitely or based on the fuel that you have on hand. They're there when you need them, just a flip of the switch. Things like nuclear, coal, natural gas kind of fit into that category. The resources that we're going to be depending more on in the future, and that we have to make sure that we fully understand and plan and do integrated planning for, are variable energy resources. So think of like solar and wind. They have production profiles that are dependent on the weather. And solar is actually really interesting, as we look at it to meet customer demand. You kind of see in the graph on the upper right, there's like incremental additions of solar. And you see that little black dot, you add a certain amount of solar and that reduces our peak. But then the next amount of solar that you add, it shifts it out later. And then the next amount of solar, that third amount of solar, like doesn't really impact the peak load that we have to plan for at all. And that's because you're shifting the peak energy demand now from solar hour or daylight hours to non-daylight hours. And so adding more solar, won't help you at all. From our what we have to do for system planning, because we have to plan to serve all the time, even during those periods. And wind has a production profile. Wind's typically more, I guess there's advantages because it's more in the morning and more in the evening, but it's incredibly variable as to when it's there and when it's not. The next type of resource that we're going to be planning on, more on in the future is energy limited resources. So this would be like energy storage or demand response. These are resources that, they don't have set production profiles like variable energy resources, but they have a limited duration that they can produce at a certain output level. And so you kind of have this diminishing return phenomena with this as well. As you add your first amount of storage, you shave the peak, right? As you add the next amount of storage, you'd actually have to go for longer, and so either you need more batteries or those batteries aren't as effective at shaving that peak. And so you get into some pretty significant challenges fairly quickly. Actually, I mean, there's a point where there's not enough available energy to actually charge the batteries. And so you can't have a reliable system like that. And so part of our goal with what we're doing is to try to find the right combinations of resources and how they can work together and the benefits that they have together to really optimize and be able to ensure that we always have sufficient resources to meet electric demand, and we don't have to do things like blackouts or brownouts or rolling blackouts, during times when customers are depending on us. Next slide. And so we actually talk about it quite a bit in the workshop, and and this is like a lot to try to get through in today's content. So I'm really not going to get too much into it, but there are periods where renewables have very low production relative to load, and that's what this graph is showing. And there's just periods where it's not very sunny and it's not very windy. And those periods can happen for a long enough amount of time that really, even if we had all the battery storage installed on Earth today to be able to solve it for our region, you wouldn't be able to solve it because it's so much energy that's required for a certain amount of time. and those are also the same periods that people really depend on us for heating their homes or, you know, keeping things functioning in very cold weather in this event. So, you know, there are these extreme scenarios where we have to understand how can we reduce load, or how can we, demand response, or how can we, have emergency generation for these types of periods, and still decarbonize for, all 99% of the other times of the year where we don't have this kind of issue. Next slide. Yeah, and so the modeling that we're doing, it includes this reliability resiliency element. It includes like the cost optimization, and then we'll do like a financial risk analysis to be able to understand how the different pathways perform under, a variety of different fuel cost forecasts or technology cost forecasts. And so this is all the work that the team is that we're working through now, and we will be working through for the rest of the summer. But workshop number 4 really talks a bit in detail about, some of these details of how we're combining those things and solving. Next slide. And so, based on stakeholder feedback, the stakeholders did want to see that we have did want to check in with us. Not sure what happened to formatting on this one. Sorry. Did want to check in with us, and so we have a meeting on 8/4. We'll show some of our. We don't know that we'll be able to share results yet, but we'll be able to share some of the things that maybe we're seeing in the modeling, or challenges that we have in the modeling. Just kind of a status update for those who want to join in. And more information on this and these workshops is on OPPD Community Connect. So we definitely like when the public asks questions or provides feedback into the process. Actually, this last workshop number 4, we had some really good feedback around how is the climate going to change, and are we accounting for changing climate? So we met with the Nebraska state climatologist, and are trying to figure out ways that we can, there's not a whole lot of data that's available for the future, but how can we take some of the extreme events that we might see in the future and make sure that whatever we're coming up with here will suffice in those types of conditions. So, kudos to that feedback, I guess. But we really are trying to make this a high quality process so we can lay a good foundation to move forward here. Next slide. So that's what I have on our energy portfolio work, and Ryan and I are happy to hear any questions that you have around the work that we're doing, or thoughts or ideas, or if we can point you to more of our materials. Is there a timeline for shutting down coal natural gas plant in North Omaha? So North Omaha units 1 through 3 are currently on natural gas, and 4 or 5 are currently on coal. In 2024, North Omaha units 4 and 5 will, I guess, when we converted them from coal to natural gas, the capacity factors on those units went from about 85% to, I think, less than 5% on natural gas. So there's been significant reductions in sort of emissions on units 1 through 3 to date, and North Omaha units 4 and 5 will convert from coal to natural gas in 2024, and we'll be there's not enough natural gas there, so we'll be retiring units 1 through 3. Some of this is, it's long duration planning, so we can't just turn off units without having a plan to supply energy to customers. But the emissions at that facility will, I think we've said will, with our power, even with the addition of the power purpose assets, will reduce about 90%. So hopefully that answers that question. And I guess there's something else to maybe share. looks like maybe Ryan dropped and he's coming back. But something else to share on that is that you know, you don't have to retire units for them to have significant reductions in emissions. You know, and so really the emissions come from using plants, not retiring plants. So we are trying to manage through a transition and to plan for those extreme events as well. So I don't know, Ryan, if anything more to share, but
I actually lost my internet connection there for most of what you
Yeah.
said, Colton. So if there's other questions, I mean, I did spend the last 7 years at North Omaha, so I doubt I had anything more to add than you already added, Colton, but can you guys hear me?
yeah,
Oh, okay, good.
yeah.
I thought maybe I lost my internet again. I was waiting for the spinning wheel to come back up.
If this is an okay time, I'm not doing as effectively as Kat in typing my questions, but I'm wondering, Ryan, you seem to be taking about 150 different generation technologies or models and bringing that down to about 16 or 18, I think you said. Isn't that a real difficulty because you're taking existing things? I mean, the whole thing is kind of a challenge because you're trying to base a future model off of the past, and the future is going to be totally different, I believe, than the past, even the technologies. You got a real challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge, and I don't remember if we had it in the slides, but we did break up our technologies. So we have technologies that are mature today, right? So things like solar and wind, lithium ion battery storage, and some of the conversions that we can do to our existing assets. So those are mature today, but we also have these this emerging bucket of technologies, and we're kind of splitting up our scenarios so that we have like a scenario, and Colton can elaborate on this too, but so we have scenarios that are based on mature technologies, and then we have scenarios based on mature plus emerging as well, and things that you would see in there are some of these high likelihood technologies such as hydrogen that you see out there that are getting a lot of research and development right now. If you look around, say even in Europe, there's a lot of investment in different technologies, and so we're trying to split it up so that we can look at things that we know exist today, but also things that we, based on our research, are confident that are coming in the future. And the real challenge comes in those technologies, as you mentioned, that maybe we don't even know what they are yet. And so those are more difficult to capture because there isn't good data on those. There isn't a lot of information. And so that's one interesting thing about this study. So, we're doing this now, right, to help us look towards the future, but it doesn't mean that we're going to do this one time and stop. So this will be an ongoing type of process where we can check and adjust based on technology changes, because I mean, just look how quickly technology has changed in the last 10 years. I'm sure if we do this 10 years from now, it'll look different than it does today. And so, this is a long range look, and we understand that there are things that are going to change in the time frame, over the 30-year horizon. And so we definitely want to incorporate a process to be able to continue to do this and make sure we're keeping up with trends and developments.
And I appreciate the answer, and it is a challenge. The emergent technology that I think has a lot of promise is magnetics. Magnets hold their magnetism. I've got a magnet that I've had for 20 years. It never loses its magnetic ability. It is clean. It doesn't require the sun to shine or the wind to blow. And our entire planet has a magnetic grid. Animals use it to navigate. it's pretty incredible, but the technology has not been developed yet. So when I say we're basing some things on the past to determine the future, magnetics seems to have so much promise, but yet we're not there into the future where we've really got the information about it or the technology advancements yet.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of, that's one of those, there are, including that, multiple technologies that, we aren't prepared for today. We don't know what's going to come from them. But when a breakthrough happens, we want to be ready and agile enough to be able to shift course and be able to study it and incorporate that into a future resource planning.
Sure. Thank you. I'll let somebody else ask a question.
Colton, you might be muted.
I am. No, I was just going to piggyback on what you said and said, we have to plan for kind of what we're aware of and what all the researchers are developing, and sort of have at least the experimental and lab scale, today, as far as, potential breakthroughs. But that doesn't mean that there won't be new opportunities in the future. So we can't really, choose to. It's hard to plan, on something that's not material, but we certainly have our eyes out there for about everything.
What other questions do you guys have?
Well, with that lack of questions, while somebody's coming up, I'll ask another one. I'm wondering about even the solar or the wind. We're looking at centralized, somewhat distributed generation, but we're still centralized and needing to wheel or move the energy from those locations. Is there more looking, or is part of the assessment the actual transmission and also the, whether it's centralized or distributed generation?
Yeah, we're looking at both centralized and distributed. I think we're also looking at the ability to upgrade the transmission system. I think there are significant costs associated with that as well, but that's part of the modeling and part of what we'll see. I think it probably becomes this sort of counterbalance of, you pay more if you want centralized, you get economies of scale, and they're quite a bit cheaper, but you have higher transmission cost. And if they're distributed, it's much higher cost to, because you don't have the economies of scale and you have all the installation, but they're being delivered right where they're needed. And so you don't have that transmission level costs. So those factors are in our modeling. Yeah, how does being part of the SPP help or hinder the decarbonization process? So that's a really good question. Being part of a large network allows you to rely, allows you to have the opportunity of renewables that are located elsewhere. And so that's actually, that regional diversification. The sun doesn't, you have clouds don't cover the same place all at the same time, and you have different wind patterns. So that regional diversification and an efficient market helps you utilize renewables more efficiently. I think, overall, having a larger regional transmission planner, kind of supports this. And to date, we've had, pretty high levels of renewable integration. I think where the challenges come and we don't actually have to worry about this today, is the market's not designed to count a cost for carbon, and so you have assets like coal assets that are dispatched well before natural gas assets, normally, which are higher carbon versus lower carbon. But to date, renewables, they have a zero cost, zero variable production costs, and so actually, they'll displace any renewable, any higher cost fossil generation in the market when they're available. So I would say to date, it really helps utilize those resources. But there's also large regional planning that goes on with transmission. So it's a large planning effort. I think kind of an example, if you looked at kind of the value of being part of a larger balancing authority or RTO, is kind of what happened to ERCOT earlier in the year. A smaller balancing authority and certainly much more significant issues with the types of weather that they had.
I guess I'll just unmute myself at this point, but how much are you all working with LES and like NPPD? Because I know like within Nebraska that you all share a lot of stuff that's like in each other's district, and I know OPPD is an area, like you guys are in like random spots in like NPPD's district, and so how are you all working with them to be able to like coordinate your goals and now also Lincoln LES's goals, and then in the future NPPD's goals?
Yeah, sure. So we actually meet with the different planners as part of our annual sort of planning process to the Nebraska Power Review Board, and we sort of look at the statewide resources and sort of integrate and talk about kind of the plans that we have. Each utility is very much on kind of a different doing different analysis or a different point in its horizon. I think NPPD's done a kind of I'd say like a lightweight study. It doesn't include the impacts of like multi-sector modeling, or doesn't include climate change, as part of like what they're planning for from a reliability resiliency perspective. They're taking notes from us on some of what we're doing. I think we look at LES and they have an ambitious goal that's a little bit sooner than ours, but we have a little bit more of a detailed analysis in the works now. So I think it'll be pretty interesting to have those same conversations probably 6 months or a year from now, now that you've actually had some time where all the utilities are looking at it. I think prior to even a couple of years ago, I don't know that the utilities had that sort of that focus on all pursuing decarbonization.
That's true. Yeah, it was hardly a thought like 5 years ago. How do you all stay up to date on new and emerging technologies? Like, do you work with consultants? Do you work with researchers? Do you just randomly come across news articles, like go to conferences? What methods do you all use?
Ryan, all of the above?
Yeah, all of the above, I would say. So because this is such a large topic right now, it's not just locally or regionally or even nationally. This is a global topic right now, right? And so there's countless conferences and news sources and different entities, agencies that are doing research and publishing and putting that information out there. And so we're trying to stay looped into a lot of that. So we have, like I said, we have a team that is dedicated to this technology exploration, and many of those members split up, doing research on areas that they're familiar with, but as well as going to conferences. We have a lot of contacts with different engineering design firms, as well as the manufacturers that are that are, leading up some of this research and development. So we get a lot of information from multiple sources and try to kind of aggregate that together into what we believe to be, the horizon for some of these technologies. And as we mentioned before, some of those new technologies that we don't even know about today, those are going to be the ones that are interesting, like how we, come to learn of those and what that avenue is. So there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of organizations that put on these conferences and they bring in experts from across the industry, and many of those experts are not just US based, they're also European or, multiple, they're international experts. So it's interesting. It's happening everywhere and it's a big effort right now. I think there's probably
Yeah.
multiple conferences every month at this point.
Ryan, I would say we also have a dedicated alternative energy team.
That's true.
As part of energy production that has like full-time professionals that are keeping track, and fairly confident we'll hear of something even at the experimental stage as well before it gets to a commercialization. So I think we're actually seeing, even with our alternative energy group, things like battery storage and solar, are things that have been around for a while. And particularly with battery storage, it's becoming increasingly commercialized only recently. And so we have a grid scale battery, not huge. It's 1 megawatt or 2 megawatt hour, I believe, but that'll help us kind of learn the technology so that we can actually make a speedy investment, once we sort of have it in our plans, and know how to manage those assets. So hopefully that answers your question, but I'd say most everything is well discussed.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that there's a team. How many people, I guess, in total are working, I guess, like, that would even be directly on the decarbonization goal? Because it seems like you all have a team, then you that's working directly on it, and then you have like a bunch of subsections working on it as well.
I'd have to count up how many people are actually on all the teams between the core team members of the different projects as well as our advisors. It is a significant number.
Yeah, well, I'd say that we probably have about 25 or 30 core team members, Ryan, just ballpark, and probably looking at like 60 or 70 once you add 60 at least once you add all the advisors, and once you start to add in like the consultants and external contractors. I mean, everyone's involved to different levels, but I would probably think that we have like a touch points with like 100 different people throughout this whole project in some way. And again, some of those are much more than others, but yeah.
Okay, I was like my guess for the high range was going to be like 25, and so the fact it's like 4 times that is actually kind of amazing to me. Another one of my questions is, also I'm a senior at UNL and I'm studying economics, environmental studies, and natural resource economics, and so this is like directly right up my alley of what I do and what my classes are about. And one thing that we go over is like using how various places in the U.S. and internationally are using are using water and like lakes and reservoirs and dams as like a way for like batteries. And so is there any thought behind that, or like why aren't we doing it? Is it too costly? Like where are the thoughts with that one?
Yeah, I think actually we've looked at pumped hydro for over a decade in Nebraska, but one thing that pumped hydro requires to store energy is you need elevation. You need to be able to pump it up higher, right? So you have what's called potential energy, so that you can sort of convert it. You can pump it up, and then when it comes down, it has a lot of pressure, and you can turn something and make electricity. So, just having a lake doesn't do it. You need to be able to have a high point and a low point, and we just don't have very many very high points and very low points in Nebraska. That being said, there are other types of what we call long duration energy storage that we're really excited about and looking at. I think right now you hear a lot about battery storage, like lithium ion, and we consider that like fairly short duration. But things like I think the most interesting, at least right now, I think, is like cryogenic energy storage. I mean, there's cryogenic and there's hydrogen, but like cryogenic energy storage, compressing air to a liquid form and then expanding it again and removing the energy, is one potential that's emerging for I'd say medium duration, and then just electrolysis and hydrogen storage for long duration. But the economics are going to make sense for short duration first before they make sense probably for the medium and long duration.
I think the short duration is farther along in development as well. Just from a maturity standpoint, there's a lot of work still being done on some of the long duration, but like you mentioned, the liquid air cryogenics, that one is making strides. I think they're actually building a fairly large pilot facility in Vermont right now. I think it was Vermont, might have been. It's somewhere in the Northeast.
So when you say short and long, approximately like what is, I guess, like the days, the month, or like the time frame for each of those?
Yeah, it gets exponentially harder. So like short duration is typically thought of as like 2 to 4 hours. There's like ultra short duration, but we don't really have that much of that on our system. Like flywheels and kind of what you see in data centers. Then there's like short duration, which is like battery storage, and there's a variety of different technologies, flow batteries or lithium ion or lithium iron or different chemistries. But I'd say those are like 2 to 4 or maybe 2 to 6 is like the shorter duration. Medium duration is probably the industry doesn't have very good standards here. Medium duration is probably the things that can go and store it for 24 hours. Or for a couple of days, right? Or probably 24 hours, so day to day. And then like long duration is probably starting to say like week to week. Ultra long duration, at the highest level of energy storage that would be required for decarbonization is like seasonal energy storage, which would be, it's windier in the spring, so you're going to save up, a ton of energy in the spring, and you're going to store it someplace until you extract it and use it, in the summer with higher load. That would be the type of seasonal energy storage, and that would be like the longer duration.
Almost like what they do with natural gas now, right? They build up their reserves, their storage of that over the summer, and then they pull down reserves over the winter. It'd be kind of like that, only with a carbon-free, fuel or medium.
And to be quite honest, like fuel storage is about the energy is about the most energy dense way that you can store energy, is like actually as a fuel. And so things like renewable natural gas or green hydrogen may be great opportunities to be able to make it and store it in some of the infrastructure that we have today. That may be some of the best option for that longer duration, or a liquid biofuel or something that you don't need it very often, but you have it as a backup. So you use less long duration than you do short duration.
Don, do you have more questions, or does anybody else have questions?
Kat, I would just, rather than a question, say that I think there has been dynamic changes in OPPD and in all of the industry, as you pointed out, but I see such importance in doing the pathways to decarbonization. And I am really encouraged to know that there are 100 people within the OPPD organization working on it, and that it's part of an international approach. So it's some of the more hopeful information, I think, for everybody who's concerned about the things that we have done to our earth and our environment that we are so dependent on. So I really commend OPPD for the dedication of personnel and resources to looking at our future and the various pathways, even though, as I mentioned and you say, it's a very difficult one to come to some conclusions or even modeling based on a future we can't see right now. But thank you. I'm very encouraged by this presentation and your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, that 100 includes folks that aren't full-time on this, and it also includes external consultants. And I'm giving you a ballpark number. Maybe we can come back with a more specific. But I would say, the sentiment is that we have, like, I know for a fact over 50 or 60 folks that either are core team or advisor, maybe 50, Ryan, core team or advisory level on this, and then consultants on top of that. So it's like every time we turn a corner, it's another person that's engaged in another aspect of it.
And that's, it's not just the energy portfolio project, right, that we were talking about primarily today, but there's also the internal operations, customer and community projects who have team members as well. So we're definitely coming at it from multiple angles, trying to address not just OPPD's net zero, but also help our communities.
I would say, I would add on, Ryan, like the longer it goes, I mean, the more people get involved, right? So like we're moving from like, very high conceptual level to, as we kind of go through the process, to it becomes more tangible, it becomes like more specific, it gets spread out across more people who have different levels of expertise, who do different types of technical modeling. And so it's sort of, at this point, I would say fairly broad, within planning groups.
Another question that I have is, how are you working with homeowners, businesses, and industries so that, they can develop their own carbon neutrality goal and they can like set their own purchasing power agreements or get solar or wind or however they want to do it? What programs are there, and like what are you like creating for them, I guess, or like what is already established so that they can take some of the load off of you all? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So I mentioned there's other parts of this study other than just the energy portfolio, right? And they all play together. But there is another project group, the customer group, and that's what you're talking about is primarily what they're focused on, is what are those products and services that OPPD can work with our customers on, both, not just residential, but also your commercial and industrial, that can help them along with their decarbonization goals. And so there's going to be more information on that coming. I can't tell you the exact date of when a stakeholder engagement is coming for that group, but it should be in the next couple months, where we want to share the work that team has been doing. And so I would ask you to hold out just a little bit, because there will be more information then. But as well as, not just that we created this customer group just for decarbonization, but OPPD has a, customer sales and service group that does that. Not necessarily specifically decarbonization, but products and services for customers full time. So Colton, you can add to that if you.
Oh, I was just going to point to, right now we have a net metering rate where customers can install renewables at their own location and receive, essentially an offset on their electricity bills for those at retail rates. So that's probably the best financial incentive that's available. And we have the community energy, or the community solar program that was sold out, and I'm not quite sure where we are with sort of future development. I think you'll probably hear a little bit more when we talk about the customer. aspect of it. But there are things, and we have been creating opportunities. But part of this is also going to be, frankly, how the community deals with things like encouraging energy efficiency codes, or encouraging heat pump adoption or electrification of transportation. Some of the areas that are a little bit more on the end use side than the electric utility is sort of like or areas that the electric utility really hasn't pushed significantly in the past. So it's a broad effort with the community.
And there's actually, if you're looking for things that we're doing currently on OPPD.com, they're underneath of both the residential and business tabs. There's a products and services link, and that'll take you to some of the stuff that we're currently doing. But there's certainly more things that are being looked at long term. That I know that products and services group has a long list of potential technologies. So
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. Thank you for letting me know. And I'll keep my eye out. I actually plan on going through and watching the workshops. I didn't know they were recorded. I didn't know they were online. So it's really cool to know. Now it's open in one of my tabs. I'll probably binge after this or during the week.
there you go. 8 hours of workshop binge watching. I like it.
I'm a college student. Binging is kind of just how I work. Another question I have is, because it's becoming an increasingly popular topic, especially within the last 2 years, is environmental justice and intersectionality, because we all know low-income people of color are most impacted by climate change, most impacted by power outages, most impacted by lack of, resources for heating and like AC units. And so with part of the decarbonization plan, how have you all included in environmental justice into it?
Ryan, do you want to take that, or do you want me to? I mean, I can talk about it relative to the energy portfolio. At this point, we're like very much in the grid level. How do we make a reliable system? How do we, pivot and make this sort of transformational infrastructure change? That is going to have impacts across the community. And so I think we'll be addressing those topics once we kind of understand what it starts to look like as a result of the pathways. I don't know that we're prepared to talk about it, at this point in our planning process. I mean, we're focused not on where to put it at this point, or how much it costs is for an individual customer and the rates. At this point, at least, these teams or my team is focused on, how do we functionally get the technology to work, right, to reduce the emissions, which, I mean, there's like the more renewables that we have, just the better the environment in general. And the cleaner the environment, the less climate change for anyone. So, maybe that's a topic that we'll be able to address once we have more specifics. I don't know that I have any more to add right now, Ryan.
Yeah, similar to what Colton said with the energy portfolio project, the other project streams, I can't say that we're ready to really talk about that as much either yet, just because we're kind of in the same spot and maybe a little behind where the energy portfolio team is, just trying to identify what, like for the customer side, what kind of products and services we can offer, and what makes economic sense both for OPPD and the customer decarbonization sense. How to rank those before we get too far into before we get too much farther with any of it. So I agree with what Colton said. We're maybe not quite ready to talk about that and dive into it where we are today, but it's not, the future.
Ryan, I did want to also comment, it's a sensitive topic, but it's something that was taken into consideration as we, developed resources for Power with Purpose. So, if you're looking at a project that's more near term and more specific, certainly there's the siting of those assets and where they're located. you know, it's a complex topic, so I don't know that we're prepared to talk on all aspects of it. But.
If I can just add, I couldn't help but jump in here. So I'll just add that you know, we're also working on the sustainability project that's separate from decarbonization, but that is absolutely incorporating the UN sustainability goals and environmental justice kind of piece of that. And right now we're at the stage of how do we, you know, what metrics should we use around that? How do we incorporate that, you know, throughout our business? And so it's something that certainly has visibility here at OPPD, and it's gaining traction as far as conversation goes.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Colton and Ryan, thank you again for joining us. Kat and Dawn, thank you for your questions. Next month, our meeting is August 8th, 1:30 to 3 p.m. At this point, we're planning on it being our final Zoom meeting. We have a couple of options in process right now, so as soon as we find out, we'll let you know. As always, check out our Facebook. Check out our website, www.greenbellevue.org. If you have an idea on a program topic or something you would like to know more about, please let us know. My email is Michelle F, MICHELLEF @greenbellevue.org. All right, well, hopefully everybody has a fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy the sunshine before rain comes back later in the week. And again, thank you, Colton and Ryan from OPPD. Hopefully you guys can get some rest coming up here soon too.